Welcome to the first flip lesson for geography, where we'll be starting on the topic of tropical rainforests. Before we start, please make sure that you have handout 1A and your writing materials with you. If you do not have these materials, please pause the video now and only continue after you have them in hand. As this is the first lesson of the topic, I will first give you an overview. The key geographical question which we will be examining for this topic is, how can we save the rainforest? But before we answer this question, we have to first understand what rainforests are in the first place. This is what we are going to learn in this lesson. For subsequent lessons, we'll be looking at what exactly is happening at our rainforests and why we need to save them. We'll then look at the consequences if we do not save them, and lastly, we'll finally answer the question on how we can react to reduce forests from being destroyed. Before we go into the lesson proper, I would like you to think about some questions. I'm sure that you have heard of tropical rainforests before. You may even have been into one with your parents or friends. Using handout 1A, write down your responses to the following 3 questions. You may want to pause the video now to give yourself some time to write down your responses. If you have finished writing your responses to the 3 questions, well done! As we go through the lesson, you will realize that the characteristics of the tropical rainforest may be very familiar to you, and you may be able to relate your responses to this lesson. We shall be looking at the tropical rainforest today by looking at 3 points. Firstly, where can we find tropical rainforests? Secondly, the biodiversity of a tropical rainforest. And lastly, the structure of the tropical rainforest. We'll start with where we can find tropical rainforests. The word tropical already suggests that tropical rainforests are found near the equator. We say that they are found in areas which experience the equatorial climate. This is found between 20 degrees north and south of the equator, as shown on the map. You can see that the dark green areas which represent rainforests are found within this boundary. I mentioned the term equatorial climate, but what does it actually mean? The picture you see is a climograph, which shows the temperature reflected by the red line graph, and also rainfall reflected by the blue bar graph. As you can see in these graphs, the equatorial climate is characterized by high and consistent temperature of above 25 degrees Celsius all year round. It is also characterized by high and consistent rainfall of above 250 millimeters on average monthly. In fact, we are experiencing the equatorial climate here in Singapore, where we experience hot and humid weather on a daily basis throughout the year. We do not have winters, and we do not have periods where there is totally no rain. So other than saying that we can find tropical rainforests in equatorial climates, we must also give examples of where they can be found in the world. The 3 most prominent rainforests in the world are found in, firstly, South America, in the Amazon basin. In Africa, the Congo basin. And lastly, the region of Southeast Asia. Closer to home, you may be surprised that tropical rainforests can also be found in Singapore, given that much of our green spaces are man-made parks such as Bishan Park and gardens that you can find in your neighborhood. The last remaining large rainforest in Singapore can be found in the Central Catchment Reserve and the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, located at the center of the island. A small patch of rainforest is also found in the Botanic Gardens in Singapore. Next, we'll be moving on to talk about the biodiversity of tropical rainforests. But firstly, I would like to ask what biodiversity means. Take some time to think about this question. Take down this simple definition of biodiversity in your handout 1A. Biodiversity refers to the number of plants and animals one can find in an area. Did you catch that? Let me repeat again. Biodiversity refers to the number of plants and animals one can find in an area. The tropical rainforest contains over 50% of the world's species and accounts for 80% of all insects and 90% of all primates. So, the tropical rainforest is high in biodiversity as you can find many different species of plants and animals in just a small area. The question I want to pose to you is, why does the tropical rainforest have such high biodiversity as compared to other types of forests? I want you to take some time to think about this question and write it down in your handout. We'll discuss this question when we meet in class. You may want to pause the video now to give you some time to respond to this question. Having said that the tropical rainforest possesses a rich amount of biodiversity, I will now show you some pictures of some unique plants and animals that you can find in the tropical rainforest around the world. The picture you see is a proboscis monkey with a large bulbous nose, and this is found in Indonesia. This weird looking creature, which looks like a crossbreed between a zebra and a giraffe, is known as the okapi and is actually a close relative of the giraffe. You can find this animal in the Congo Basin in the African rainforest. The last picture on your right is a capybara, which looks like an oversized hamster. This is actually the largest rodent in the world and is found in the Amazon forest in South America. Carnivorous plants such as Venus flytrap, pitcher plant, and sundew, which consumes insects as part of their food, can also be found in tropical rainforests. If you look at the picture at the bottom left corner, you can see two dragonflies being trapped by the sticky liquid produced by the sundew and are slowly digested by the plant as food. Other types of plants that you can find are lianas, which are thick woody vines, and epiphytes, which are plants which grow on other trees for support. You may notice the bird's nest fern, which is a kind of epiphyte growing on trees, and this is very common in Singapore. A rarer site would be that of wild orchids, which are also epiphytes and grow on trees in the wild. Of course, many of us plant orchids now in pots, but the natural conditions that they are living in are actually on trees itself. Other plants which you can find on the ground of the rainforest include mosses, lichens, and fungi. Here you can see some fungi in the form of mushrooms in the rainforest. But beware, not all of them can be eaten. Some of them are highly toxic and can cause death if consumed. We have now finished the section on biodiversity and will now move on to the last segment of the lesson, which has to do with the structure of the rainforest. The structure of the rainforest is classified into three distinct layers, namely starting from the bottom, the undergrowth, the canopy, and the emergent layer. I will now talk about each layer in more detail. The undergrowth layer is very dark as very little sunlight reaches the ground. There is very little plant growth and plants are spaced apart widely. Plants which can adapt to low light conditions such as moss and fungi can grow in these areas. There is very thin leaf litter because leaves which fall onto the ground decomposes quickly in the hot and wet climate. This picture shows you the dark undergrowth of a tropical rainforest. You may want to ask, why is it so dark? Let's move on to find out. The reason lies in the second layer, which is the canopy layer. In this layer, the crowns of trees which are wide and umbrella-like join to form a continuous canopy. This continuous canopy prevents 90% of sunlight from penetrating into the lower layers of the forest. Here in this picture, you can see that the canopy layer blocks out a large amount of sunlight entering the undergrowth of the tropical rainforest. This is why the undergrowth will always remain dark. The topmost layer of the tropical rainforest consists of the tallest trees of the forest, which will emerge from the canopy layer. These are known as the emergents. Look at the picture. Can you spot the emergent and the canopy layer? Let me give you 5 seconds to identify it. Have you spotted them yet? Let me point it out to you. Okay, the emergents are those which are circled in red. And you can also see a continuous canopy which is just below the emergent layer. With that, let me just wrap up by showing you the structure of the tropical rainforest again. The tropical rainforest has 3 distinct layers, which are the undergrowth, the canopy, and the emergent, and we have gone through that in detail. With that, I come to the end of our first flip lesson. Please prepare the following items and bring them to class. Thank you for your attention, and we shall see you in class.